There is more legal drama over President Donald Trump, who said last week he expected to be arrested. He has not been arrested, but throughout the night and into today, legal arguments have been flying back and forth over whether Trump's own lawyer has to provide testimony and evidence to prosecutors because his services may have been used to facilitate a possible crime.
Okay, so listen, I need you to sit down for this one because what just happened in a federal courtroom is absolutely insane. Like, this isn't your typical Trump drama. This is different. This is his kid, his youngest son. Barron Trump just got dragged into the most explosive legal battle we've seen in years. And honestly, the implications here are wild. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. So here's what went down. October 27th, just a few days ago, a federal judge issued a subpoena for Barron Trump. Yeah, you heard that right. The president's 19-year-old son. They want him to testify in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. And get this, the judge publicly warned that if Barron refuses to show up, he could face contempt charges. And we're not talking about a slap on the wrist here. We're talking possible jail time for a teenager, the son of a sitting president. Can you believe this? Like, when has this ever happened before? I'll tell you when. Never. This has literally never happened in American history. No sitting president's child has ever been threatened with jail time for refusing to testify in a federal trial. This is unprecedented territory, and honestly, it's kind of terrifying, no matter which side you're on politically. Now Trump's legal team is losing their minds over this. They came out swinging on October 26th, calling the subpoena outrageous and politically motivated. They're saying Barron is being used as a pawn, that this is just another attempt to go after Trump by targeting his family. And look, whether you love Trump or hate him, you gotta admit, dragging a 19-year-old kid into a federal courtroom and threatening him with jail, that's a pretty aggressive move. But here's where it gets really interesting. The prosecutors aren't backing down. They claim Barron may have witnessed key events or conversations at Mar-a-Lago that could be crucial to their case. They're saying he might have information about classified documents, about who had access to them, about conversations that happened behind closed doors. And apparently, whatever they think he knows is big enough that they're willing to go nuclear and subpoena the president's son. Social media went absolutely crazy when this news broke. Like October 25th, the day before Trump's team even responded, people were already speculating like mad about what Barron might reveal. The rumors flying around are insane. Did he overhear conversations about classified documents? Did he see something at Mar-a-Lago that prosecutors need to know about? Was he in the room when certain decisions were made? And then the more conspiracy-minded folks started asking, what if Barron testifies against his own father? Now, come on. Let's be real for a second.
Now, let me also suggest that when you invoke the president's son's name here, when you try to make a little joke out of referencing Barron Trump, that does not lend credibility to your argument. It makes you look mean. It makes you look like you're attacking someone's family, the minor child of the president of the United States.
The idea that Barron Trump is going to walk into a courtroom and drop some bombshell that destroys his dad's defense, that's probably not happening. But the fact that prosecutors think he has relevant testimony, that's huge. That means they believe he was present for something important, something that could change the entire trajectory of this case. And here's what really gets me. The judge made this warning public on October 24th. They emphasized that Barron's testimony is considered big enough to justify the subpoena. Big enough. What does that mean exactly? Big enough to prove obstruction? Big enough to show Trump knowingly mishandled classified materials? Big enough to, I don't know, upend a presidency? This whole situation raises so many questions about executive privilege and presidential power. Like, can you legally force a president's kid to testify against his own father? What are the limits here? What kind of precedent does this set? Because if they can do this to Barron Trump, they can do it to any future president's children. And that's a pretty wild expansion of legal power, if you think about it. Trump's defenders are calling this political weaponization of the justice system. They're saying this is a coordinated effort to pressure Trump by going after his family.
There is a federal judge who has found that the president of the United States has committed a crime.
Right.
In fact, 2 crimes.
More likely than not, yes.
Exactly, under a preponderance standard.
Right.
So that is obviously a lot less than proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
They're pointing out that Barron was just a teenager when most of the alleged incidents at Mar-a-Lago happened. What could he possibly know? That's so critical to this case. But the other side, they're arguing this is about accountability. about national security, about the fact that classified documents were allegedly stored at a private residence where family members, guests, and staff had access. They're saying if Barron witnessed something relevant, he has a legal obligation to testify, that nobody is above the law, not even the president's son. And honestly, this story matters right now, because we're heading into the 2026 midterms. Public opinion is everything. And a spectacle like this, a teenager being dragged into court, possibly facing jail time, all while his father is sitting in the Oval Office, that's going to shape how people vote. That's going to dominate the news cycle for weeks, maybe months. The whole country is watching this play out in real time. Cable news can't stop talking about it. Twitter is on fire with hot takes from every angle. Legal experts are debating whether this subpoena will even hold up. Political analysts are gaming out what this means for Trump's approval ratings. And meanwhile, Barron Trump is just a 19-year-old college kid who probably never asked for any of this attention. So buckle up, because this Barron Trump courtroom drama is just getting started. And trust me, it's going to get way more intense before it's over. Alright, so let's dig deeper into what's really happening here, because the surface level story, yeah, it's dramatic, but when you start peeling back the layers, this gets so much more complicated and honestly way more interesting. First of all, let's talk about what this Mar-a-Lago classified documents case is actually about, because a lot of people hear classified documents and their eyes glaze over, like yeah, boring government paperwork stuff, but no, this is serious. We're talking about documents related to national security, intelligence briefings, potentially information about foreign governments, military operations, classified programs that could literally put people's lives at risk if they got into the wrong hands. The allegations here are that after Trump left office, well, technically this is his second term now, so we're talking about after his first term, he took classified materials to Mar-a-Lago, and not just like a few stray papers. We're talking boxes and boxes of stuff. Documents that should have been turned over to the National Archives. Materials that legally belong to the government, not to Trump personally. And here's where it gets messy. The government asked for them back. Multiple times. There were negotiations. There were lawyers involved. There were supposedly agreements made about what would be returned. And then the FBI showed up with a search warrant. They raided Mar-a-Lago in August 2022. Remember that. That was a huge deal. A former president's home getting searched by federal agents. And they found more classified documents. Documents that Trump's team had allegedly said didn't exist or had already been returned. So now the question becomes, was this just sloppy record keeping? Did Trump genuinely not know what was in those boxes? Or was there intentional obstruction? Did someone deliberately hide documents or lie about what was there? And that's where Barron comes in. Prosecutors think Barron might have seen something, heard something, been present for conversations that could answer those questions. And look, Barron lived at Mar-a-Lago during parts of this period. He was there. He had access to areas of the property where these documents might have been stored. It's not crazy to think he might have witnessed something relevant. But here's what most people are missing about this story. This isn't just about Barron's testimony. This is about the government sending a message. They're saying, we will go after anyone who has relevant information. We don't care if you're the president's son. We don't care if you're 19 years old. We don't care about the political optics. If you have information we need, you're getting subpoenaed. And honestly, that's either really inspiring or really terrifying, depending on your perspective. On one hand, yeah, nobody should be above the law. If Barron witnessed potential crimes, he should testify. That's how the justice system is supposed to work. But on the other hand, dragging a teenager into a political firestorm like this, threatening him with jail time, that feels pretty extreme. Trump's legal team is arguing that Barron is being used as leverage, that prosecutors know Trump will do anything to protect his son, so they're using Barron as a pressure point to try to force a plea deal or get Trump to cooperate. And you know what? That's probably not entirely wrong. This subpoena definitely puts pressure on Trump in a way that other legal maneuvers haven't. But let's talk about executive privilege for a second, because this is where things get really legally complicated. Executive privilege is this concept that the president and his close advisors can't be forced to disclose certain communications. It's meant to protect the confidentiality of presidential decision-making. But does that extend to family members? Can Trump claim executive privilege to prevent Barron from testifying? Probably not, because Barron doesn't work for the government. He's not an official advisor. He's just the president's kid. He happens to live in the same house where allegedly illegal activity occurred. That doesn't give him any special legal protections. At least that's what prosecutors are arguing. Trump's team might disagree. This could end up being a whole separate legal battle, just about whether Barron can even be compelled to testify. And then there's the Fifth Amendment angle. Barron could potentially plead the Fifth, refuse to answer questions on the grounds that his testimony might incriminate himself. But wait, incriminate himself how? What would Barron have done that was illegal? Unless prosecutors think he was somehow involved in moving or hiding documents, which seems unlikely for a teenager who probably just wanted to play video games and go to college. Here's another thing nobody's talking about. What if Barron actually wants to testify? What if he saw something that bothered him and he thinks the truth needs to come out? I know that sounds like a crazy Hollywood movie plot, but it's possible. Barron is 19 now. He's an adult. He can make his own decisions. And if there's a rift in the family, if he's upset about how things went down, he could choose to cooperate fully with prosecutors. Can you imagine the absolute chaos if that happened? If Barron walked into that courtroom and actually provided damaging testimony against his father, the media would lose their minds. Social media would implode. It would be the biggest political story of the decade easily. But more likely, Barron testifies, says he doesn't remember anything specific, didn't witness any conversations about classified documents, wasn't paying attention to what his dad was doing work-wise. That's the most realistic scenario. He shows up, answers questions vaguely, and the whole thing becomes a big nothing burger, legally, but a massive political spectacle. Because that's what this really is, at the end of the day. A spectacle. Whether Barron's testimony actually matters to the case or not, the image of the president's teenage son being forced to testify in a federal trial is politically explosive. Trump supporters see it as proof of a weaponized justice system going after his family. Trump's critics see it as accountability finally catching up to someone who's avoided consequences for years. And the timing here, come on, we're heading into 2026 midterms. Control of Congress is up for grabs, and this story is going to dominate headlines for months. Every time there's a hearing, every time there's a new filing, every time Barron's lawyers say something or Trump tweets about it, that's a news cycle. That's cable news talking about it for hours. That's everyone having an opinion. The judge in this case knew exactly what they were doing when they issued this subpoena. They knew it would be controversial. They knew it would make headlines, but they did it anyway, because apparently, whatever information Barron might have is worth the political firestorm. So where does this go from here? Well, Trump's legal team is probably going to fight the subpoena in court. They'll file motions. They'll argue executive privilege, even if it's a long shot. They'll try to delay, to negotiate, to find any way to keep Barron off that witness stand. Because once he testifies, once that door opens, there's no controlling what happens next. And think about this for a second. What does this mean for Barron's life going forward? He's 19, he's in college, he's trying to have some semblance of a normal existence, despite being the president's son. And now he's at the center of a federal criminal investigation. His name is all over the news. People are speculating about what he knows, what he saw, whether he'll protect his father or tell the truth. That's an insane amount of pressure for anyone, let alone a teenager. There's also the question of what this does to the Trump family dynamic. Like, is Melania furious that her son is being dragged into this? Are Trump's other adult children rallying around Barron? Or are there tensions about how to handle this legally? Is Barron getting pressured from multiple directions about what to say or not say? We don't know any of this because obviously it's private, but you can bet there are some intense conversations happening behind closed doors. And here's something else that's wild. This subpoena might actually backfire on prosecutors politically, even if it's legally justified. Because the image of the government threatening a 19-year-old with jail time, that's not a good look. It plays right into Trump's narrative about overreach and persecution. It gives his supporters something concrete to point to and say, see, they're going after his family. They have no limits. They'll do anything to get Trump. So prosecutors better be absolutely certain that Barron's testimony is worth the political cost. Because if he gets on that stand and says nothing useful, this whole thing becomes a massive own goal for the Justice Department. Okay, so let's break down exactly what this means and why you should care. Because I know some of you are thinking this is just another Trump drama story, another controversy that'll blow over. But no, this one is different. This one has real implications for how our legal system works and how future presidents are held accountable. Point number one, this sets a massive precedent. If federal prosecutors can successfully subpoena and compel testimony from a sitting president's child, that changes everything. It means family members are no longer shielded by proximity to power. It means if you witness something potentially illegal, it doesn't matter whose kid you are, you can be forced to testify. And honestly, that's probably how it should be, but it's a major shift in how we've traditionally treated presidential families. Historically, there's been this unspoken rule that you don't go after the president's kids, you don't drag them into legal battles. You don't make them part of political fights. Obviously, that rule has been bent and broken over the years, but this takes it to a whole new level. We're not talking about asking questions or requesting voluntary cooperation. We're talking about a subpoena with the threat of jail time. That's aggressive, that's unprecedented, And it's either the justice system finally working the way it should, or it's a dangerous politicization of legal power, depending on who you ask. Think about what this means going forward. If you're a future president, you now know that your kids aren't safe from legal scrutiny if they happen to witness something relevant to an investigation. That's a huge deal. That changes the calculation about where you live, who you talk to around your family, what activities you engage in when your children are present. It fundamentally alters the relationship between the presidency and the law. Point number 2. This is about more than just Barron. This is about everyone around Trump who might have information about what happened at Mar-a-Lago, staff members, security personnel, family members, friends who visited, anyone who had access to areas where classified documents were allegedly stored. Prosecutors are sending a clear message. We're going after everyone. We're not stopping until we have the full picture. And if that means subpoenaing the president's son, so be it. And you know what that means? That means other people around Trump are probably terrified right now, because if they're willing to go after Barron, they're definitely willing to go after everyone else, which could lead to more cooperation with prosecutors, more people deciding it's better to testify voluntarily than to wait for a subpoena, more information coming out about what really happened with those classified documents. This is classic prosecutorial strategy. You start with someone who's going to make headlines, someone whose subpoena sends a message, and then you work your way through everyone else who suddenly becomes much more willing to cooperate. It's intimidation through precedent. And honestly, it's probably going to work. Point number 3. The political fallout from this is going to be massive. Like we're already seeing it. Trump's base is rallying around this as proof of persecution. They're seeing a 19-year-old being threatened with jail time, and they're furious. They're donating more money. They're getting more energized. They're viewing this as an attack, not just on Trump, but on his entire family. And that narrative is powerful. That plays into every argument Trump has made about a deep state weaponizing government against him. But on the flip side, moderates and independents might see this differently. They might think, okay, if prosecutors are willing to go this far, maybe there's really something there. Maybe this isn't just a political witch hunt. Maybe Trump actually did something seriously wrong with those classified documents, and they have evidence that requires Barron's testimony to prove it. So politically, this cuts both ways. It fires up Trump's base, but it also validates concerns about his handling of classified information. Heading into those 2026 midterms, this becomes a major issue that candidates have to address. Do you support the subpoena or oppose it? Do you think this is legitimate accountability or political persecution? There's no neutral position here. Everyone has to pick a side. And here's the thing, this story has legs. It's not going away. Every court filing, every legal maneuver, every statement from Trump's team or the prosecutors, that's all going to be front page news. That's all going to be analyzed and debated endlessly. This is the kind of story that dominates a news cycle, not just for days or weeks, but for months. Point number 4. Let's talk about what happens if Barron actually testifies. Best case scenario for Trump, Barron gets on the stand, says he doesn't remember anything useful, didn't witness any relevant conversations, and the whole thing becomes a waste of time legally. But even then, the damage is done. The image of him testifying is out there. The story dominates the news. Trump looks either sympathetic because his kid got dragged into this, or guilty because prosecutors thought his son's testimony was necessary. Worst case scenario for Trump, Barron testifies and actually provides information that's damaging. Maybe he remembers a conversation about hiding documents. Maybe he recalls his father instructing someone to move boxes. Maybe he saw something that contradicts what Trump's legal team has been arguing. If that happens, this case goes from complicated to catastrophic for Trump. And here's the thing, we won't know which scenario plays out until it actually happens. Barron's testimony is sealed until he gives it. We don't know what questions prosecutors are planning to ask. We don't know what information they think he has. So this whole story is going to build and build and build until that courtroom moment actually happens. Now let's zoom out and talk about why this matters beyond just Trump in this specific case. This is about the limits of presidential power in a democracy. Can a president's family be held accountable for things they witness or participate in? Should they be? Where do we draw the line between protecting presidential families from political attacks and ensuring nobody is above the law? These are hard questions, and honestly, there's no perfect answer. You can make good arguments on both sides, but the fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that a judge felt comfortable issuing this subpoena, that tells you something about where we are as a country right now. The traditional norms around protecting presidential families are breaking down, the gloves are off, and whoever is president next, they better be aware that their family members aren't safe from legal scrutiny anymore. There's also a broader question here about national security and accountability. If a president mishandles classified information, if there's potential obstruction of justice, how far should prosecutors go to get to the truth? Should family members be off limits? Should there be special protections for people who just happen to be related to powerful politicians? Or should the law apply equally to everyone, regardless of their last name or their connections? I think most people would agree that the law should apply equally. But when you're talking about actually enforcing that principle, when you're talking about threatening a teenager with jail time because he might have relevant testimony about his father, that's when it gets complicated. That's when people's principles get tested. So here's where we are. Barron Trump has been subpoenaed. He's been threatened with contempt charges and possible jail time if he doesn't testify. Trump's legal team is fighting it. Prosecutors are doubling down. The whole thing is heading for a courtroom showdown that's going to be must-see TV or must-read news coverage at least. And the bigger story here, this is about accountability, about whether rules apply equally to everyone or whether proximity to power shields you from consequences, about whether our justice system can handle investigating and prosecuting a sitting president without tearing the country apart. We're in uncharted territory. Nobody knows how this ends. But one thing is for sure, the Barron Trump testimony saga is going to be one of the defining moments of Trump's second term. It's going to shape public opinion. It's going to influence the midterms. It's going to set precedents that last for decades. The legal arguments are going to be fascinating. The political implications are massive. The human element, a 19-year-old caught in the middle of a historic legal battle, that's compelling. This story has everything. Drama, legal intrigue, political stakes, family dynamics, national security concerns. It's the perfect storm of controversy, and no matter what happens, no matter how Barron testifies or what information comes out or how the case ultimately resolves, this moment is going to be remembered. This is the moment when we decided as a country whether presidential families are subject to the same legal standards as everyone else. This is the moment when the line gets drawn or redrawn about how far prosecutors can go. So yeah, buckle up, because this story is just getting started. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around to see how it all plays out. The next few months are going to be absolutely wild. Every legal filing, every court appearance, every public statement is going to move the needle on public opinion and potentially on the case itself. Next time, we're diving into what Trump's legal team is planning to do to fight this subpoena and why their strategy might actually backfire in a massive way. We're going to look at the specific legal arguments they're making, the precedents they're citing, and whether any of it actually has a chance of working. You're not going to want to miss it. This thing is just heating up.